Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with this week's 3D printing focused video. This video is sponsored by Ghamak, and Ghamak's 3D printing bundle this month for their science fiction line is based around basically Space Marines. So they have created an entire bundle of fantastic miniatures, and I'm going to use one of them in this video and basically talk to you about some of the things I think it's important to know before you decide to go on the journey of 3D printing a Space Marine army. The things I'm going to talk about in this video are which company should you go for to choose your 3D printing sculpts, what it's like to 3D print an entire army, what it's like to paint an entire 3D printed army, and any pitfalls I think there might be to this entire process. Before I get into the video, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my current patrons. There has been quite an uptake in patrons in the last couple of weeks. I believe that it's due to the fact that now all my patrons will get a custom video once a week just for them. So that means that all patrons get an extra 52 videos a year from me on a whole host of topics. So if anyone is interested in getting involved, there's links to my Patreon below. It has never had a better time to get involved. Without further ado, guys, let's get into the video. Okay guys, just so we are clear, this video is not a painting tutorial. If you want to know how I painted the miniature in this video, it'll be based off of the video I did for this Space Marine you're seeing right now. So I'll put a link at the top of the screen now. So if you want to see me painting Ultramarine in retro color scheme, all the paints I used, techniques I used, you can click on that link after the video and then go check that out. For now, it's going to be more of a me talking over while I paint this particular miniature. So this is the beautiful 3D printed model from Ghamak. There is links to all of this below. Their MyMiniFactory, their Patreon, and all those other bits and pieces. So I thoroughly recommend that you guys go and check them out and see the awesome selection of miniatures they have available. And once again, huge thank you to them for sponsoring the video. So I talked about at the beginning of this video that I wanted to talk about 3 topics. I'm not going to go crazy in depth. Like I said, this is the beginning of me making content based around 3D printing. So as the weeks, months, and years go on, I will obviously become more knowledgeable and I'm more experienced in the field. And hopefully I'll be able to produce better videos for you guys and help you on your 3D printing journey. But some things that I have noticed already, and I think they're important to point out. So the first one is where do you get your 3D printed files from? So, Space Marines being pretty much the most popular miniatures on the face of the planet, the most sold, the most money earned from any company that produces 3D sculpts, would be insane to ignore them as the potential. Which means that every single one of them is going to, at some stage, produce a line of 3D sculpts based around that aesthetic, like Ghamak have done this month. One of the things that I think Ghamak did very, very well was the balance. And by the balance, I mean the idea of when you look at this miniature, you can tell it's supposed to represent a Space Marine on the tabletop. Having said that, it is not so close to the actual Space Marines that they're going to receive an NDA letter or a cease and desist letter in the mail and have to pull this range from their website. The reason I think this is so important, if you go down the route, you choose a particular brand to go with to produce your army, then you're going to want to stick with that. Their aesthetic is the only aesthetic that's going to match the force that you're constructing. You don't want to choose a lieutenant from one company and a squad of infantry from another company and a tank from another company. Because all of them have different designers and they have different aesthetic choices, they're not going to match all that well, and I think it's going to look a little goofy on the tabletop. So I feel like if you choose a company or a brand to go with for your sculpts, you should stick with it the whole way through. So, like Ghamak, they have chosen to release their ones, and the aesthetics that they have changed are things like the helmet. A Space Marine helmet is so iconic that if you copy that or even get close to it, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to be super noticeable and it's going to get pulled. Ghamak have made these beautiful kind of like knightly war helmets, which is basically their own design, which means that they are safe. So that means you'll have an entire army with matching helmets. The reason I think this is super important, or another reason I think this is super important, is it opens up the idea that later on Ghamak will make more files, more sculpts, more things for this force. If another company puts up a batch of miniatures and you get started using those, and then all of a sudden they get pulled, that means that company's not going to produce any more miniatures for that line. And all of a sudden you're stuck with that problem with, okay, now I need to get some tanks from a different company now. Oh no, they don't really match these guys. The tank commanders don't match, or this character doesn't match, or this assassin doesn't, you know what I mean? So I think it's a super important thing to consider. Do your research, find the ones that you enjoy. I personally love the ones that Ghamak have done here, and I cannot wait for them to do future releases and really flesh out the range. The second thing is what it's like to 3D print an entire army. So I'm not going to butter this up. 3D printing an army is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. You'll see a million videos out there showing you that it saves you X amount of money and Y amount of money. And you're right, it does. It's definitely a cheaper way to produce an entire army, even if you incur the cost of a starter printer. Starter printer these days only runs for kind of 250, 300 euro. You spend probably another 100 quid on equipment. So you're talking about kind of 350 euro, which is about 80% the cost of your first Warhammer army. So you're still making a saving. But it is not the easiest process in the world. You will suffer print fails and mechanical issues with printers, and it can be a frustrating hobby. So just be aware that when you buy your first printer, it is not as simple as a toaster, as a plug in and play kind of thing. It is an entire hobby unto itself. And that's something I think is super important for everyone to understand, that there is learning curves. The more you use it, the better you will get. The more problems crop up, the more things you will learn, which means that in the future it will be easier to work with and easier to get nice, smooth, beautiful prints. Having said that, I've been 3D printing now for about 5 years and I absolutely love it. But even me, after 5 years, get frustrated, have fails, struggle to figure out why stuff goes wrong. I still think the benefits outweigh the negatives, and as the technology gets developed more and more due to its growing popularity, more and more of these issues will be obsolete or moot as companies develop tools or better technology to mitigate the issues. As goes the painting side of things, so there's as you can see, this is a 3D print, and I chose this miniature and chose this paint scheme because I've done this paint scheme on a Space Marine before, so I was able to kind of mentally compare the feeling of painting one to the other. Now this particular sculpt, this beautiful one, is very highly detailed. It's got a lot of angles on its armor, which means that this technique actually works out quite well. It makes the model pop quite a lot. I think the blue worked out an absolute treat. I'm not quite sure I got the yellow as crisp on this guy as I did on the plastic miniature, but that just could be a bad steady hand day, if you know what I mean. Having said that, I haven't felt any real difference between painting a resin miniature to a plastic miniature. Once the model is constructed and sprayed, there's really no difference to the surface, the texture. What I will say is obviously this models are not completely smooth. They are slightly porous due to the print lines, which means they will grip and hold on to shades and contrast a lot, so they don't run as much. So you need to pay attention to those quite a lot, because pooling will be slightly different, and you will still have pooling and you will have to pull it away, but it could have the potential of pooling on a flat surface as opposed to in a recess. So it's just something you need to keep an eye on and think about when you're painting it. The only other real difference is it's a fragile material. Like, as you can see, I'm using a painting handle, so I don't have to touch it too much. But as you can see, even right here, it's resting on 2 fingers. I snapped off the cloak on his back twice during the painting process, which is a little annoying. We all have had hobby hands before. We have dropped miniatures, plastic miniatures and stuff. And the worst that happens is, you could bend a sword, or, a small piece could snap off. But realistically, you drop a plastic model, it's just going to bounce. You're going to pick it up, dust it off, and continue painting. If you drop a model like this, you could have serious crackages, you could have serious damage, sometimes enough damage that you unfortunately will have to just go back and print out a new one and start again, because it can crack in bizarre ways. So like I said, it is a more fragile material to plastic. which is something that you're going to have to consider, be careful about when you go through the process. So here's a side-by-side of the two finished miniatures. I quite like the look of both very clean and fresh looking marines. I think Ghamak has done a fantastic job with these sculpts. Like I said at the beginning, I thoroughly hope that you guys go and check out all their links below and enjoyed this video. Okay guys, and there we have it, a 3D printed, basically ultramarine lieutenant model. I think he's very fit for the tabletop. He looks quite cool. I certainly would have no qualms about seeing him across the tabletop from me. He was quite a joy to paint, very detailed miniature, even a little bit more detailed than a standard Space Marine Lieutenant, I believe, because of the shape and angles of his armor, but still quite an enjoyable process. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, it would mean the world to me if you took 2 seconds out of your day and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel even further, like I said at the beginning, there's links to my Patreon below, and you can see all the different benefits you can get from there. Thank you guys so much for sticking around at the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one.